The Seventh Tower by Garth Nix. Book 5. Into Battle. Chapter 11.
"I can't walk across the lake bed," exclaimed Tal. "I'll be eaten in a minute." "There is a way," replied Lokar. "It is fortunate that you have a storm shepherd on hand. First, you will have to make a suit of chromatic armor. Make it a handwidth too large in all ways, so the storm shepherd can cram in with you." "Chromatic armor?" asked Tal. "What's that?" "Don't the lectors teach anything anymore?" grumbled Lokar. "It's armor made of light, of course. In this case, you have to make sure it's airtight." "But how do I make it?" asked Tal. He couldn't help but be fascinated by the idea. "And how do I breathe?" "The storm shepherd," said Lokar. She paused then. As it was clear Tal didn't get the idea, she continued. "He's made mostly of concentrated air and water vapor." Tal wrinkled his nose. "So I'll be breathing address?" he asked. "That sounds disgusting." "You won't even notice," said Lokar. "Nor will he, as long as you don't stay in the armor for more than a few hours." Tal considered this. It was pretty revolting, but it did seem the only way he could cross the lake bed. Then another nasty thought struck him. He remembered the Kerfur being sucked straight under. "So, I'll be in armor," he said. "But what if something swallows me whole?" "Chromatic armor can be fashioned to radiate intense heat. You'll be comfortable inside, but to anything outside you'll feel like a red-hot Benish root. Nothing will want to eat you, I promise." "I'd better ask Adris," Tal said. The storm shepherd was still snoring in midair. Tal prodded him in the arm. Nothing happened, so he punched him lightly, his fist sinking into the cloudy shoulder.
"What?"
boomed Adris, sitting up with a start.
"I'm awake. I didn't fall asleep."
"Yes, you did. But that doesn't matter, since we seem to have survived. Now, how do you feel about crossing the bottom of the lake, inside armor made of light, while I use your air to breathe?"
"What?"
asked Adris again. He shook his head and cleaned out one huge ear with a puffy finger.
"What did you say?"
Tal explained. 3 times. He explained they couldn't fly because they'd be seen. Adris's main problem with the plan was going under the ash. He didn't like the idea of that at all. When Adris finally agreed to give it a try, Tal looked back into the red keystone. Lokar was sighing again. "How long have you been gone?" asked the Guardian. "Only 15 minutes at the most." 15 minutes. Lokar shook her head. "Gone with the hours, gone with the days. Listen, Tal, I will explain how to make a suit of chromatic armor. Are you familiar with indigo crafting and blue welds?" Tal had to admit that he was not. "Violet bonds? Yellow crimping? Red shifts? Orange weaves?" Only the last 2 were familiar to Tal. He said so, and Lokar sighed again. "Then I will begin with the basics. Listen carefully. We will take it in stages. I will explain, then you will do what I have taught you, then we will go on to the next step." For the next 6 hours, Tal labored under Lokar's directions. He made several false starts, and was continually having to begin again. But slowly the suit of chromatic armor began to build in the cave. It looked like a man-shaped sarcophagus made of rainbows, all 7 colors swirling through it. It was fashioned in 2 parts that hinged down one side so Tal could get in and close it on himself. Finally, the chromatic armor was ready. It lay glowing on the floor, colors constantly chasing and mixing across its surface. It looked solid and heavy, but Tal had no trouble standing it up and opening it a bit more so it stood upright on its own. "How do I see out of it?" he asked Lokar. As far as he could tell, the suit was all rainbow light with no transparent parts, even in the helmet. "You will be able to see from inside when the suit is closed," replied Lokar, "provided you've made it correctly. It is particularly important that the unraveling cord is in the right place on the outside." Tal looked at the suit. Sure enough, there among the moving rainbows in the middle of the chest plate was a solid circle of violet light. When it was time to open the suit, he would grasp that and pull it, springing the suit open. The unraveling cord was essential. Tal remembered the near disaster he had creating the minor veil, trapping Adris in its making, and almost asphyxiating himself and Crow.
I guess we better go then, he said. I'll talk to you as soon as I can, Lokar.
Lokar didn't answer. She was singing the song again. Tal looked away, breaking contact. He tied the red keystone into his shirt once more, for safekeeping.
Time for us to get in,
Tal announced to Adris, who had been floating near the ceiling. The Storm Shepherd grumbled a low, thunderous rumble, but lowered his legs to the floor. Tal opened up the two halves of the suit a bit more, then stepped back into it, shuffling his feet into position and setting his shoulders in place. The suit, as instructed, was too large. When it was closed, there would be a good handspan between Tal and the sides. Adris drifted over and stared at him.
Where am I supposed to go?
Tal hadn't thought about how they would actually get in. After a moment's reflection, he stepped out.
You get in first, and then I'll squeeze in against you, he said.
It's pretty small,
Adris objected. He started to go in face first until Tal stopped him and made him back in. Though Adris was much bigger to start with, he compressed well into the armor. His cloud body could shrink and expand enormously.
Shrink a bit more, Tal instructed as he backed in himself. We have to both fit.
I don't like this,
said Adris.
It's a prison.
No, it isn't, exclaimed Tal. It's only for a few hours. There.
He was in. It was weird being pressed up against the Storm Shepherd. He felt like a clammy sponge. Tal hoped Lokar was right about Tal being able to breathe some of the air that Adris was made out of. He reached forward and grabbed a thin blue circle that had held constant among the rainbows of the other half of the armor. He pulled it, and it came apart in his hand, breaking into 1,000 tiny motes of blue light.
Dark, take it,
cursed Tal. He thought he'd broken it. Then the suit of armor started to close. Tal quickly pulled his arm back into position and kept absolutely still. Adris squirmed a bit around him.
Stay still.
Slowly, the other half of the suit closed in on Tal. He watched it inexorably shutting and had a moment of panic. What if he'd made it wrong, and the suit crushed him? What if he couldn't breathe? What if Adris had too much water vapor in him and not enough air, and they ran out halfway? The suit closed. Rainbows danced across Tal's face. He took several deep breaths, and was relieved that there seemed to be something to breathe. Slowly, the rainbows in front of his face faded. He could see out into the cave, though flashes of red and blue did keep crossing his vision. Experimentally, Tal raised one arm. It moved easily enough. Tal could see his armored limb rising, rainbows coruscating all over. But as he raised his arm higher, it got harder to move, until it was stuck, and no matter how he strained, it would not move at all. He tried to move his other arm. It went a few inches, and then froze too. Fear hit Tal again. He'd made the armor incorrectly, and now he couldn't even reach the unraveling cord. They were stuck in here forever.